Hey everyone, welcome back to another video, and this video will look into functions in Java. Now before we get started, I want to answer a few questions that people are asking. Some people say, hey, can you share the notes? Some people say, hey, can you share the assignments? And can you share the entire link to the entire playlist? Everything is listed in the description below, even the Discord link, Telegram channel, assignment, and code samples. Everything is listed in the description below. Please just check once, you will find it everything over there. So in this video we'll look into functions. So we'll look at a lot of things in this video. We'll do a lot of nice questions and important concepts as well, and let's get started. So before, as always, before looking at functions, let's look at a problem statement of why we might want to use functions. So I'm just going to create a new project here. New project, all the list of and everything, like which video we did before, all the complete list of videos, the playlist is given in the description below. So make sure you check it out, and also like, share and subscribe. Documents, community classroom, lectures. I'm going to create another one over here. It says methods. Okay, here I'm just going to write my code. Functions or methods. So in Java we call functions as methods, because if we have basically a function that is in a class, we call it a method, and in Java we put everything in classes. So in Java we have we call functions method. We talk more about that later, what is method, what is function, don't worry. So create it. Here we have our default function. We already discussed about it previously, and we write all the code over here. We have already discussed that we have put everything in classes, and this is the main function that runs. So function is nothing but a block of code. We'll look into let's look into the example right now. Imagine that the question is something like this. The question is, take an input. Okay, take an input of two numbers and print the sum. Okay, take input of two numbers and print the sum. Okay, that's the question. So we can try to solve this. You can say scanner input is equal to new scanner system.in. Okay, I can print a message over here like enter number 1. Okay, enter the first number, then the person will input the first number. Then I can say enter second number, enter number 2, and int number 2 is going to be equal to int dot next int. Then I can say int sum is equal to number 1 plus number 2. Okay, and then I can say print sum. I can say something like the sum is equal to sum. All right, very simple stuff. Let's run this. Number 1 is 10, number 2 is, let's say, 20, sum is 30. Okay, let me remove a new line from here. Okay, now that is very simple. Everyone knows how we do this. The next question is something like this. The next question is, or if I just define it somewhere else, I can say, I can define it separately as well. num1, comma num2, comma sum. So now the values are defined, and I can just remove the definition from here. Okay, so I just defined the value above, and here I'm just updating it. So now the next question is the person who gave the question. Now that person says that, hey, do this entire thing 10 times. After it displays the sum, you have to ask for the two numbers again, display the sum again. Do this 10 times. So you will be like, okay, I can do it something like this: 1 time, 2 time, 3 time, 4 time, 5 time, 6 time, 7 time, 8 time, 9 time, and 10 time. Let's say the person asked you to do this 100 times. Would you copy paste it 100 times? That would be very inefficient. Another problem you may face over here is, let's say the person asks you to change the wordings of this. So then you would have to change the wording of this. This code is dry. The dry format. Dry means don't repeat yourself. In coding world, dry means don't repeat yourself. So basically this is not good. Imagine if the person asked to take the input 1000 times. Would you copy paste this 1000 times? So this repeated code if there was a way to bundle this code in some sort of a format and use that format of many places, we can use functions or methods for this. So methods and functions, like Java, same thing. When we have any function in a class, that is known as a method. So in Java we can call functions methods. So basically, if we can put this entire thing in a method, we can use that method again and again. Let's try to do this. Sum, I'll call it a sum. I can say public static void main. I'm going to create a method over here. Okay, I'm going to say method has this definition. Okay, access modifier. This is something we'll look in object-oriented programming. Okay, so don't worry about it. We'll look into it in object-oriented programming. So we have the access modifier, and then we have return type, and then we have the name, then we have brackets, and then I have the return statement, and then we have the over here we have the body of the function. For example, let me just remove the access modifier for now. Let's say I'm just taking a simple function. Okay, this is something we'll discuss in object-oriented programming. So here I'm just going to make a simple function that will be like this thing. Okay, this particular thing. So here it needs to, I can just say void. You can call it a name as, so basically return type, let's say I am giving void. Sum is the name of the function. I can give it anything. Then I'm just not passing anything over here. I'm just adding some braces over here because of the syntax. And here in the body, I will write this thing. Copy this thing, write this thing over here. Have to initialize it. Entire thing I put it over here. Now I can call this sum function. I can call it like this. Okay, this is showing me an error because of it not being static. So here I'm just going to write static over here, and the reason for this I'll explain in object-oriented programming. Okay, if you want to see the error message that you're getting, it's saying non-static method sum cannot be referenced from a static context. Okay, so this is a static. Okay, this is a static method. Static we previously talked about already, like the human example we talked about. Human population, that is static, means it does not depend on the object. So anything you want to use in static, that also has to be static, is basically what it's saying. Okay, so here I'm going to add static over here. Why these things are happening, what is static internally and everything, how we can work with non-static functions and everything, we'll discuss it in later on. Okay, so here let me just refresh and like run this. So it's just going to run this function. Enter number 1, 20, number 2 is 30, sum is 50. How is it working? We all know main function is the first function that is going to run. So basically it's going to run this one, and then it's going to start, hey, run the sum method. The sum method is over here. It's just going to run it line by line. You can call it many times you want. You don't have to copy the entire code base again and again. Any change you make in this code base will be resulting in all the function calls. So this is just writing the name of the function, and this is calling the function. You call the function via brackets. You can also pass things in this bracket that is known as parameters, that will like arguments, which we'll talk more about later. For example, main function has this argument. We can also add arguments over here. But let's look at the simple function for now. Let's say even more simple function you want to look at, display or greeting. This is just a simple function that displays hello world. Okay, so I'm just going to say public static void main, and I'm going to create a method called static. It is just displaying to me something. We don't worry about what this return type basically means. Return type basically means that, okay, this is a good important point. Let's talk about return type. What is return type? So let's talk about the definition. Return type basically means when you call the function, what is the value of this line, this particular function call going to be? When the function finishes execution, this particular thing that I have highlighted is going to have some value. First point. When when the function call is finished, so you call the sum function over here, it will call it like this and like this and like this, line by line, line by line, it's going to call it. When the function finishes its call, the entire thing is run and it comes out of here again. This particular thing that I have highlighted, the function call, it is known as a function call. It will have some value, first point. Second point, the value is actually going to be whatever you return in this function. Okay, so that is the return type. Let's see. So basically here I'm saying that I just want to display something. I don't want to return anything. So if you don't want to return anything, you write void. Then I'm just going to give the function name as greeting or whatever. I'm just going to say print hello world. Now I'm going to call this function over here, greeting. It's just going to print hello world. Okay, so I call this method, it's just saying hello world and that's it. Let's look at a few examples in which we might want to return a value. So let's say you want to actually get the value of the sum and not just print it. Okay, so here you can do something like this. I can say static. Now the return type will change. So the question is return the value. Return the value. And integer plus integer gives me what? Integer. Hence now the return value is not going to be void. It's going to be integer because I'm going to return an integer. Sum2. I'm just giving a random name. Okay. I can say copy this entire thing. Here instead of displaying this, I'm going to return the sum. I hope that makes sense. So basically I'm returning sum. Sum is of type integer. Hence I have the return type as type integer. What is return again? Return basically means that the value of the function call, this call, it is going to give me a value of whatever I return inside this function. Inside this function I'm returning the sum, hence it will give me the value of sum. Sum is of type integer, hence I can save it over here. Int answer is equal to this. Sum2, sorry. This is sum2, right? So sum2. Sum2 is returning an integer value, hence I can store it in an integer value. And if I just print answer, let's try to run this. It's saying enter number 1, enter number 2, and let's say I do 20 and 40. So the sum value will be 20 plus 40, 60. It's going to return 60. Means this thing will return a value of 60, which is going to be stored in this reference variable. Hence the value of answer is going to be 60. And when I print answer, it will show me 60. Simple stuff. Okay. There's one more thing. Return basically means this function will end. If I am putting a return value over here, it means function over. You know, that Rahul Gandhi meme, khatam, you know, tata, bye. So that is what's happening over here. In any function or method, whenever the return statement is hit, it's basically mean, okay, your work here is done, just come out of here. Okay, function call is over. Whatever return value was there, just, you know, save it in whatever you're saving it. Meaning if I put anything outside this, let's say I say this will never execute, it's also giving me an error. It's saying this statement will never be reachable, unreachable statement, because I'm returning the function value over here. Whenever return hits, it means khatam. That means khatam basically means, like in Hindi, it means done, over, no more thing is happening right now. It will come out of here, nothing will execute. That is what is meant by like the return statement as well. I'm just going to comment this out. Okay, return means function over. Alright, that is why return statements are at the end. Okay, so that was like the basics of it, and I hope the definition is clear. Let's try to give some other example. Let's say I take some other example like float example or string example. Let's return a string example. Here we will return a string. Public static void main. I'm going to say something like, let's create a function static. I'm going to return a string. So I'm going to have a string data type as a return type. I'm going to say greet. Okay, not passing anything over here. This is a syntax. I think by now you might be aware of the syntax, and it's also giving me an error over here. It's saying you are asking it to return a string, but you are not returning anything, so error. That will also give an error. By the way, if for the return types you have specified something as a return type, you have to return it. Otherwise it will give error. Here if I return something like an integer, if I return let's say 23, it will give an error. It's like, hey, you are asking as a return type of a string, but you are returning an integer. Required type was string and you are returning integer. That is not going to work. Either make it string or either make this integer. Okay, this will work. We want to return a string. So let's say I just return a greeting. I can make some greeting over here. I can say string greeting is equal to something like how are you. Okay, and I'm just returning that greeting. When I run greet over here, this will actually have a value of string type when I run this function. So I can store it in a string type. String message is equal to something like this. Print message. Message is going to be what? Again, I know I told you previously as well. Main is the first method that is run. So main will run, then it will say, okay, the message value is actually whatever we are returning from greet. Hence it will jump inside greet and return this value. This value will then be stored in message, and then it will print the message. Let's try to debug it and see line by line how these things are working. Okay. I accidentally debugged something else, the previous example. Okay, so here it's saying it's over here and over here. Now it's saying the message value is actually whatever value I'm getting from greet. Hence it would have to go inside greet. Now it's inside greet. Inside greet, it's saying, okay, return the greeting value. Return the greeting value, how are you? Hence this will be equal to how are you, and this value is actually being stored in message. So the value of message will be whatever value we are returning here in the function call. So value of message is going to be how are you. Message is equal to how are you. Print how are you. End the program. That's it. Run this, it will print how are you. How are you. Okay. Let's look at the main part. So we already talked about, we already talked about what is the return type meaning. We already talked about what is name. Here we put arguments. We'll talk more about arguments in a while. We also talked about return statement. This statement type and this return type has to be same. We also talked about the body. In body you can put everything. Now let's just talk about arguments. So let's say you don't want to add scanner here again and again. Let's say you want to pass the value of the numbers when you are calling the function. Okay. Pass the value of numbers when you are calling the method in main. How do we do that? We do that via parameters. We can add some parameters over here. So here we have two parameters, number 1 and number 2. So we can just say something like, we can say something like static, return type will be int, sum3. It's taking two values, int a and int b. The name does not matter, you can put any name. And here I'm just going to say int sum is equal to a plus b and return sum. Now when I call sum3, I can say int answer is equal to sum3. I'm calling it. It's giving me an error. It's like, hey, in sum3 it's actually asking for two values. You are not providing me anything. Provide something. So I'm saying, okay, from a I can provide, let's say 20. For b I can provide 30. So here it's saying value of a is provided as 20, b is 30. In IntelliJ IDEA, if you're seeing this gray color thing, a colon, b colon, this is just for highlighting purpose. It is not a part of the code base. It's a feature of IntelliJ IDEA. So please do not write it like this. You might be like, hey, IntelliJ IDEA was writing it. It's just for your reference only. Internally, how it's working is you have to pass it in the order of declaration. If a is passed first, b is passed second, then whatever value you pass as first, that will be replaced with a. Whatever value you pass as second, that will be replaced with b. So when this function is actually called, all the values in this method body, A will be replaced with whatever is passed at this position. B will be replaced with whatever has been passed at this position. So A will be replaced with 20, B will be replaced with 30. Okay, and then we'll do 20 plus 30, return 50. Let's try to print the answer. It will print me 50. Cool. We will see how these things are passing internally and what memory management and all these things are happening. We'll look more into in just a little bit. Okay, in greeting also you can do something like this. Let's say you want to pass the greeting. Okay, so you can say something like string example. I can take it in a string example. I can say something like string message is equal to, or personalized message is equal to greeting or my greet or something like that, and I'm going to have to create my greet. So basically I can say by the way, in IntelliJ IDEA, we already talked about Alt enter and Command enter, like option enter. So here IntelliJ IDEA is so smart, it knows that this function will return a string type because I have assigned it to a string type. So I can do Alt enter create, so it will automatically create it. Automatically create it for me. Don't need this right now, we'll discuss that in oops. Automatically created the body string type. I can say return, or I can say something like string message is equal to, I can pass a greeting over here. I can say string greet. Okay, and then I can say message is equal to something like this, hello greet, or I can just say name over here. Okay, and then I'm just going to say return the message. So here it's saying, hey, you are asking for a name or something in string format and you're not providing me anything. I'm like, okay, Kunal Kushwaha. Let's try to run this. Let's try to print this. It's going to say, it's going to replace the name with Kunal Kushwaha. Message will be equal to hello Kunal Kushwaha. Hello Kunal Kushwaha will return. And this personalized will actually contain the value hello Kunal Kushwaha. Hello Kunal Kushwaha. Okay, you can also pass it something like this. You can say scanner, let's say you want to take the input, is equal to new scanner system dot in. You can say s out, enter your name, and you can say string name is equal to in dot next, and here now you can just pass the name. My name is Kunal. Hello Kunal. Simple. This name value, the NAME and NAME, this does not have to be same. This can be something else. Naam. How these things are working internally, we'll see next. Okay, we will see why this does not have to be same as this. Okay, it does not really have to be same like this. Okay, in order to understand this thing, let's dive into it. Okay, so now let's look at our thing and see if we did not miss anything. So return type covered, function name can be anything covered, arguments covered, and we'll talk more about like variable length arguments later on. Body covered and return type also covered. Now let's look how this thing is working internally, and yeah, let's look into that. Let me create a function called or method called like something like swap. Okay, so basically the idea is I'm going to say int a is equal to 10, int b is equal to 20, and I'm going to swap these in a I'm going to swap these. So basically in order to swap two numbers, you can just do in Java something like this: temp is equal to a is equal to b is equal to temp. This is the way to swap a number. Okay, very simple. Swap numbers code. Okay, basically if I say print a plus b, so it's basically now going to say a is going to be 20, b is going to be 10. So it's going to print 20, 10 because the values are swapped over here. This is very simple stuff. 20, 10. Okay, value of A is 20, B is 10. Why? Temp value is going to be equal to what? Temp value is going to be equal to 10. Then the value of A is going to be equal to 20. And the value of B is going to be equal to temp, which is 10. So A is 20, B is 10. A is 20, B is 10. Okay, this is a simple code to swap two numbers. Okay, I hope you are able to understand that. Now, let's try to do the same thing in functions. Okay, very important concept. Please pay attention. Static, we are not returning anything. We are just swapping two numbers. Okay, so I'm just going to say static void. I'll give it a name called swap, and it's basically going to have two numbers, int a comma int b, and I'm just going to write this over here, and I'm just going to call the swap function over here, a comma b. The question for you all is this actually going to swap the value, or is it not going to swap the value? I made a function called method called swap. It takes a and b, does the same thing. A is passed over here, B is passed over here, and then I'm going to check whether the actually value swapped or not. Did A become 20 and B become 10 or not? Pause this video, think about it, and now let's look at the answer. It did not swap it. It did not swap it. How is it happening? What is happening? How is it working? Let's see. Okay, let me try one more thing. Let me show you some other thing. So let's say I create another file, like say something like, string name is equal to Kunal Kushwaha. Okay, let's try something else. Then I'm going to say change name. I'm going to pass name over here. Okay, then I'm going to print name, and change name basically just changes the name. So basically static void change name string name. I'm going to say name is equal to now Rahul Rana. So is it going to change this name to Rahul Rana? It says string name is equal to Kunal, change name, this name will be passed over here, and here I'm saying in the function, okay, then the function will run. Kunal Kushwaha is passed, is saying now name is equal to Rahul Rana. Now I print it out. Is it going to change the name value to Rahul Rana? It won't. For this, we have to understand how these values are actually being passed. That is an important concept. Let's look into that. Now, before we move on to explaining how this thing is working, there's one thing I want to share with you. So in the string example over here, let's say I create another new example. Let's say some passing example. Okay. All right. So I can say string name is equal to something, Kunal Kushwaha, and then I'm just going to say call the greet method that takes a name. Okay, and I'm just going to create this greet method, void greet name and whatever. So I believe I shared about this like briefly previously as well. But the important point note over here is that this name, NAME, and this name does not have to be like the same format. This can be anything like naam. Okay, name and naam. And here I'm just going to say print naam. Still, it's going to do the same thing which it was doing when I passed name over here. When the name of this actually was name only. Let's run this. Kunal Kushwaha. So this values particular like the value name is NAME, and here I'm passing NAME. So Kunal Kushwaha is being passed over here in this method. Now internally what is happening is that when we call this, when this method is called, Kunal Kushwaha that is passed over here, that will be replaced by naam. This naam does not care what this particular name is. It can be either Chacha. Pass Chacha over here. Why did I write my name here then? Iron Man. Okay. So this can be anything. So when I pass Chacha over here, Iron Man will be passed. Internally, this naam value will contain the value Iron Man. Let's see how this is working internally with a diagram. So how this is working internally is something like this. So we have in our main function, we have something like this, the public static void main, and in this we have something like name is equal to Kunal. Okay, and then I'm saying greeting, pass name over here, and that's it. Now in the greet method, it is taking a name and it is printing that name. Or basically, sorry, it's not taking name. Then the value I took over here, the format I used over here was naam. It's printing the naam. So this is how it's working internally. In the main function, this is an object. Okay, object. We know this is an object. Internally, it's something like this. This is in the heap memory, Kunal, and name is pointing to this. Very important point. When name is passed in this method, the value is passed. Okay, actually the value of the reference variable is passed. In Java, there is no particular thing known as pass by reference. Okay, in Java, there is only pass by value. So here, actually what is happening is that this is a reference variable. A copy of the value of this reference variable, value of this reference variable is passed over here. So this is a copy, naam. So naam is basically going to have another reference variable, which is a copy of this. And since this is a copy of this, it's going to point towards the same object. Okay. So that is how it's working internally. When we pass something in the function, in Java, there is no pass by reference. It's only pass by value. And in this case, it's only passing the value of that reference, a copy of that reference. Okay. So here in the main, we were accessing this object by name. Here we are accessing this object by another variable named naam. Both of these reference variables are pointing towards the same object. Now the previous example that we took that had something like this. This example that was here, swap one. So here you were like change name. So like name passed over here. If I put naam over here, does not really matter. You can put naam over here. So here what is happening? Why did this not get changed? So we have something like name is equal to Kunal Kushwaha. Change name. So name will be passed over here. Naam's value is going to be Kunal Kushwaha. It's saying naam is equal to Rahul Rana, but naam is actually not being changed. Why is it not being changed? Let's see. So basically in my public static void main, I have a name which is equal to, let's say, Kunal. Then I'm saying change name, passing name over here. And when I'm printing name, it's actually showing me Kunal only. Okay, it's showing me Kunal only. In change, what are we doing? In change, basically we are taking a naam and we are saying naam is equal to Rahul Rana. So how is it working internally? We already saw nothing new. Name is going to be pointing to this object of Kunal. Naam is also going to be pointing to the same object because this is a copy of this reference variable. What is happening in this line? Naam is equal to Rahul. A new object is being created. Naam is now pointing to Rahul. Did this change the original name? Did this change to what the original name was pointing to? No. Hence when I print name again, when I print name again over here, it's going to print Kunal. Very simple stuff. Okay. I'm telling it again and again, no pass by reference in Java, only pass by value. And in terms of like objects and stuff, so that are like, let's say non-primitives, the references copy is passed. So this, basically this and this thing, the parameters, both are going to be pointing to the same object. This is also true that any change made via this reference variable to the will also be reflected in the main object. Now in this case, you may be saying, hey Kunal, why did it not reflect in this then? Because here you are not changing the object, you are creating a new object, not changing creating a new object. And this we will go more in detail regarding strings. Strings are immutable, means you cannot change those for like security reasons. So here you might be saying, hey Kunal, you are saying that these two are pointing to the same object. Hence, if I want to make a change via num, it should also change the original object. That is true. But here we are not changing the original object. We are creating a new object and assigning that to num. I will show you an example in this video only of changing that object and how it will result in the original change. But for now, I believe you are able to understand this particular thing. Also, one more thing I want to show you is basically this thing. So here num is in this scope only. Num, you cannot use it outside. I can't do something like this. Print num, giving me error. It's saying num is not defined because num is only available in this function, which is the scope of that function. Okay, so this is known as scoping. We'll go more in detail in scoping, but this is very simple stuff that if you want to access any variables or anything that are available in this function, you can only access those in this function only. You can't do it outside this function, like print something like in some other function in swap, maybe for example. You can't do something like print num. Num is only available over here, hence you can only access it over here. This particular thing num, or if I say int a is equal to 10, everything is like available in this section only. Int b is equal to 30 or 20, and here if you write int a is equal to 50 or 40, a is already defined, that's why it's giving an error. But let's say num. Okay, so adding num over here, you can add the same name over here as well. It will not give you an error like num is defined twice. No, because for this num is defined in this function scope, the main scope, and for this num it's only defined in the change name scope. Okay, no one outside change name can access num or all the other variables in it. Same thing goes for this, all the variables that are in the parameter. This is known as scoping. You cannot access scoping. In short, you cannot access this outside this function. Okay, we'll look more into scoping later on. But there's one more example we were having is why did it not swap this thing? Let's look into it. Why did it not swap? So primitives, it's actually just passing the value. Okay, so these are two things you have to remember. Primitives, like int, short, char, byte, or whatever, for it's just passed by value. For objects and references also it's passed by value only, but for this it's actually like just passing value. Okay, and for your objects and references, so objects and stuff, it's actually passing value only, but passing value of the reference variable. So both of those reference variable like name and num pointing to the same object. Very important, and I have multiple time mentioned it. So let's look into this example what is happening. So here basically I'm saying in public static void main I have a and b, a is equal to 10, b is equal to 20. I'm saying swap a and b. It will not swap. So basically in the swap method we will put something like, let's say number 1 comma number 2, and here I have saying, let's say a is pointing to 10, b is pointing to 20. Similarly num1 will be pointing to since the primitive, so only value will be passed. So num1 will be pointing to say 10, and num2 will be also have something like 20. Value is passed. Okay, here the value is passed. So that is pretty much about it. And over here also, if it's something like this as well, okay, if it's something like this as well, that totally depends on like the Java implement. So if you're saying like something like a is equal to 10 and b is equal to 10, this is up to Java. Like if it want to create new object, which is like heap memory and stuff, some optimization might be there. But here the value is being passed, and when we do something like temp is equal to num1. So in this function's scope, I'm just going to remove this thing. So in this functions scope, what is happening is temp is now having a value of 10 and num2 is going to have a value of what? Num1. So num2 is basically going to be equal to what? 10. Sorry, not 10. Sorry, it's actually num1 is equal to num2. Yeah. So num1 is equal to num2. So num1 is actually going to have a value of 20. So here num1 is having a value of 20. Let me see if this is visible. Okay, and here then num2 has a value of temp. So num2 has a value of temp, which is 10. So even though in this function scope these are swapped, but are the original A and B swapped? No. Very simple. In both the cases, like same thing, pass by value. One example I want to give you now is that of objects and references. So these are for primitive data types. For primitive data types, it's only going to do pass by value. For objects and references, for complex data types, pass by value of that reference variable. So both the reference variable pointing to the same object. If you make a change via one reference variable, original one will be changed. Let's look into an example in which the original value is changed. That will make things much more clearer. Okay, so let's look at an example in which, let's say we take an example, change value example. Okay, public static void main. So I can say something like, I'll create an array over here because I want to show you if the original value of the object is being changed. Create an array. We will look arrays in the next lectures. Okay, so for now array is just a collection of, let's say if I'm making an integer array, so it's a collection of numbers only. Okay, nothing else. Just a data structure, collection of numbers. String is a data structure which is a collector of letters and characters. Array is a data structure, let's say collection of integers or numbers or whatever. So I can create an array like this. 1, 3, 4, 2, 45, 6. Random numbers. Okay, we will go into details of this later on. But what I want to show you is if I create a method over here that says, static change, no return type, change, and I pass an array over here. So something like I say nums. Okay, passing an array over here. I'm saying the 0th value of nums should be 99. And here I'm going to call this function change arr. Then I'm going to say print arrays.toString arr. Basically toString is just printing this. Don't worry, this will we will go in detail of this. Okay, toString is another method. You can see public static string toString. It just takes an integer array and returns the string value of it. So now you might be able to understand the string builder and everything. We'll look into it later on. It's nothing much, but I believe you know that much Java now that you are able to understand this code. Just simple for loop and stuff only. Okay, the question to you all is this going to change the original array or not? Let's see. Let me get my iPad here. Let me show you how this is working internally, then we'll run it. So basically original array is pointing to something happening like this. So original array arr has an object pointing to 1, 3, 2, 45 and 6. When I pass this in a function, I know this is in a reference and object, so reference copy will be passed. Another reference will contain the same object. So in this case nums pointing to the same object. This is not passed by reference, it's passed by the copy of the value of the reference. Okay, big difference. Just making a copy of this. So here it's saying in the function, it says nums of 0 is equal to 99. By the way, arrays are displayed by indices: 0th index, 1st index, 2nd index, 3rd index, 4th index. So it's saying the 0th index should be changed to 99. Okay, via nums. Is it going to be changed for array as well? Yes, pointing towards the same object. some objects was modified by nums, original object is also modified. You know, if Kunal is spending money, baby is spending money, son or brother is spending money, original object is spending money. First lecture, we did this, memory management. Okay, first or second lecture, I don't remember. Check out the links in the description of the playlist. Let's try to run this. Will the original ARR be changed? Yes. Changed. Don't have this doubt that, hey Kunal, why is string not being changed over here? Because we are not modifying the string. Here we are modifying the array. Here we are not modifying the string. We are creating a new object. Also, you cannot modify strings. Strings are like final classes. So it's like final. You cannot modify it because for security reasons, they are immutable. We'll talk more about this later on. So here you can see, basically, in short, if you make a change to the object via this reference variable, same object will be changed. I hope that makes things clear. Now let's look into the next thing, which is known as scoping. Okay, so in short, when an object's reference, you know, like when the object's reference, this reference, when this reference is passed to this parameter, actually the reference itself is passed by call by value, because the value that is being passed refers to the object. Okay, so this nums will be another like value of this reference variable pointing to the object. Okay, so it's actually call by value. It's not call by reference. In Java, we do not have pointers. We do not get the address or anything in Java. Okay, cool. Let's look into scoping now. So now we are starting with another important concept known as scoping. What is scoping? What do we mean by scope? Scope basically means where we can access our variables. Okay, so for example, if I have something like int a is equal to 10, int b is equal to 20, and here I create another function like static void random function or whatever. Here if I try to print a, it will not allow me. It's saying, hey, you cannot, this function does not know that a exists in some other function. Only you can access a in this function only, the main function only. Okay, similarly if I create num equal to 67, okay, you can access num over here. You can say print num or whatever. You can't access num over here. Okay, this is the first scope known as the function scope. So if you define any variables or anything in a function, you can only access those inside the function. This also holds true for all the arguments, int marks or something. If you try to print marks over here, you will not be able to. You can print it over here. You can do anything you want in this function with marks, because marks has a scope in this, but scope basically means you can only access these variables inside this function in very simple language. Okay, you cannot access it outside. So in the previous example, in the swap example, here you can see that nothing changed because the real values didn't change, because this is not passing the reference of a and b, it's actually passing the values of a and b. And because the scope of the function swap will be defined in the swap function only, so these values, if you can say, num1 and num2, so basically num1, similarly the same thing we did previously. Okay, it does not really matter if we change the names to whatever. So this num1 and num2, whatever change you make will only be this change. This change will only be valid in this function scope only. Okay, so for primitive data like ints, chars and etc. And yeah, so in primitive data types the value will be passed, hence the original value is not changed. In other data types like non-primitive data types like arrays and stuff, it's also passed by value, but it's actually like I summarized it very well previously, passing the value of the reference variable. In that case, if you make change via that, then the original object will be changed. Two very important points and very simple as well. Okay, let's look at a block scope now. Let's look at some block scoping. So if I have a block scope over here like this, okay, just a simple block that I have created. Function scope, I think it's very, very clear and very simple as well. Okay. So here if I write a block code, so I can say something like, let's say int a is equal to 78. This is giving me an error. This is giving me an error. It's saying a is already initialized. Okay, so basically if you initialize something, int a, you cannot do this again. If you write a is equal to 90, error. You can change the value like this, but you cannot initialize the same reference variable again. Okay, very important point. So here it's saying that a is initialized in its block, and this block is actually inside this function. So this is the reason it's saying that it's giving you an error, but you can definitely modify it. Okay, if I do something like, let's say int c is equal to 99, and I try to print c over here, giving me an error, cannot resolve variable c. In short, for block scopes, what is happening over here is that you know over here that if you have in the block, if outside the block in that same function the value is, it is already initialized, you cannot initialize it again. Okay, you cannot initialize it again. But if you initialize a value, if you create the value specifically for this block, it is only going to be used in this block. In even more simpler terms, values that are initialized in this block will remain in the block. Okay, values initialized in this block will remain in block. Okay, so C is initialized over here, it is not being used outside the block, cannot use outside the block. But if some value is already initialized outside the block, initialized, okay, I'll just write it over here. Already initialized outside the block in the same method, hence you cannot initialize again. Okay, but you can change the value as well. But you cannot initialize again, but you can change the value definitely. So if I say a is equal to, let's say 100, and then I try to print over here, print a, printing 100. Question is, if I print it outside, is it still showing you, is it going to show 100 or 10? It's showing 100 only. So here, changing the original value. So here, basically reassign the original reference variable to some other value, because it's not creating a new one. In order to create a new one, I have to write int over here. So this is a proof. Very simple stuff, right? You don't confuse yourself that why is it changing the original one. It's changing the original one because this reference variable is the original one. I have not created a new one. In order to create new one, you have to initialize it again. So whatever things you're doing it with the original value. Okay, so that's pretty much about it. Just two rules, don't confuse yourself. If you initialize something in this block, it will be used in this block only. And basically if something is already initialized outside, you can definitely update it, modify it, use it as well. And original one will be changed obviously because original reference variable is being used. Okay, same goes for strings as well. You can say string name is equal to Kunal. Okay, and here you say name is equal to Rahul. Name is equal to Rahul. And then when you print Rahul over here, you can say print name over here, print name over here as well. Both of these will be Rahul. Very simple stuff. Now we don't have any other variable. Original value is only being used. Okay, so basically here it's just saying name is equal to Kunal, and in the block, so basically it's just like, name is equal to Kunal, and in the block I'm using the same name reference variable. Did I create a new one? Did I say string name is equal to Kunal again or Rahul again? No, I used the original name. So I just did name is equal to Rahul. Name is equal to Rahul means Rahul. Original one is being changed. This was original string initialized over here. Okay, so hence when I even outside the loop, if I access it, if I say print name, it's going to say, okay, it's pointing to Rahul, print Rahul. Let's look into something else as well. For loop also has its own scope. So let's say we take scoping in for loops. So if I write a for loop like this, I is less than 4, I plus plus, print I or whatever. Can I access this I outside of for loop? No, I can't. This I is only defined in the for loop. All the other numbers, int num is equal to 90, int a is equal to 10. Okay. Here it's saying that a is already defined in the scope. Same reason that I gave for this, same reason for this. Okay. So in short, whatever values are already defined in the scope of the function of the for loop or the block, you cannot initialize those again. Outside this, in this function scope, so basically in this function scope and outside this, anything that is initialized, you cannot initialize again over here. Anything that is outside, you can use inside, but anything that is initialized inside, you cannot use outside. That's, I believe, the best example. Yeah, that's great. That is great. Anything initialized outside, initialize means defining the new values. Int a, int, basically this adding this data type means initializing, okay, creating a new reference variable. So difference, understand the difference. Initializing, updating, initializing, updating. Okay, people who are forming notes, write this down. So basically anything that is initialized outside the block can be used inside the block, but anything that is initialized inside the block cannot be used outside. Similarly, anything that is initialized outside the block cannot be again initialized inside the block, but anything that is initialized inside the block can definitely be initialized again outside the box. I think that is very simple. Okay, I'll repeat it again. Anything initialized outside the box, you can definitely use it inside the box. It will be available inside the box. You can update it inside the box. Original one will get updated because it will use the same reference variable, and you cannot really reinitialize in the box. Anything that is initialized inside a block of scope, you can definitely initialize it outside, but you cannot use it outside. Okay, this will only be available over here. Since outside this block it does not know that C exists over here, hence it can reinitialize it over here. Okay, same thing for loop. In for loop it's saying anything that is initialized outside the block can be used inside the blocks, means inside this block it can be used. It knows outside there is an A, so you cannot reinitialize this again, but you can definitely change it inside the for loop. Okay, if I say A is equal to 10,000, obviously changing the original value. Changing the original value. I'm not saying int a is equal to 10,000 or something like in the previous examples. I was saying, in the previous examples, this is int, int being made again and again. Here it's not made again and again. It's changing the original one. Let's try to print a. It will print 1,000, 10,000 or whatever. 10,000. Okay. So I mentioned the point again and again. Initially initialized outside the, outside any scope, you can definitely use it inside it, but you cannot reinitialize it inside. Anything that is initialized like inside, it cannot be used outside. Hence you can do anything you want with it outside, initialize it again or whatever, because scope of this C will end after this thing. After line number 16, no one will know that C exists. C will only exist in between line number 8 and 16. Anything initialized in this block will remain in this block. Similarly, in for loop, anything initialized inside the for loop will remain in the for loop only. For example, num, for example, I, you cannot use those outside. You cannot use this over here. Okay, so I believe that makes sense. Cool. So that is pretty simple stuff. Now let's look into shadowing. What do we mean by shadowing? Oops, new class. Public static void main. Let's say I say something like, if we create a variable that is, let's say, outside the uh, in the higher level of the scope. So basically function has its own scope and blocks have its own scope, for loop have the own scope, other functions may have the own scope. But what if you define the variable over here? This will also have its own scope. This scope will be available to everything inside this scope. See, very simple. If you initialize something over here, it will be available to everything that is in this block of this. So it is initialized over here. So A is going to be available to everything that is inside the block of A. Similarly, X is going to be available to everything that is inside the block of X, this yellow thing that I have highlighted. Okay, and since I mentioned it previously, in order to use anything, you have to have it, in order to use anything in static, you have to have it static. So hence why I'm putting static over here. Why we are doing this and everything, we'll learn in object-oriented programming. Basically, the idea is that you don't want static. Static is basically object independent. So you cannot use object dependent things in object independent things. That is the reason we are adding static over here. Very simple explanation. Don't think much about it. Much more clearer it will be when we'll actually making entire classes to explain what static is. For now, just imagine you have to put anything that you're using inside the main function, you have to make it as static. Just understand this right now. Why we are doing it? We'll do it in object-oriented programming. Okay. So similarly, A was available everything inside the block of A. X will be available everything inside the block of X. I can do print X over here. Okay. Here if I create static void fun, print X over here, not giving me any error. Not giving me any error. Okay, I can add some value to this as well. 90, for example. I can a value of 90. This is going to print 90. If I call fun, this is going to print 90, 90, 90. So what is shadowing in Java? So shadowing is basically, for example, if you have int x over here, okay, int x is equal to 90. So shadowing in Java is basically a practice of using two variables with the same name within the scope that overlaps. So this x variable has a scope of this entire block. Everywhere over here you can use x. What if I create another x over here and I give this x a value of, let's say, x is equal to, int x is equal to, let's say, 40, and here I print x again. So this is going to basically print 90. This is now going to print 40. Someone just made a PR. Nice. Okay, this is going to print 90. This is going to print 40. So basically, when you add another variable in the scope that overlaps, because this is going to have a scope of this, this is going to have a scope of this. So this scope is overlapping for this and this. The higher level scope, the variable with the higher level scope is hidden. So when you access x again, it is actually going to print this x and not this x. This will be shadowed at line 8. This is known as shadowing because the lower level is overriding the upper level. So higher level is shadowed. Let's print this. It should print 90, 40, 90. 90, 40, 90. This is taking the original one. Then I introduced a local scope. Then it's printing the local scope. Then it's calling fun. Since this only is available in this block, this x is going to be available for this x. This x is basically this x. Obviously, we know it by now. This is going to be in this scope only. Okay, so this is known as shadowing. Cool. So basically, this is printing the value of the class variable x, which is this one. And this is basically, the class variable. This is known as the class variable. The class variable at line 4 is shadowed by this. Now whatever value of x you print or do over here, modify, print or whatever, it is going to modify this only. Okay. One important point I want to share is about the scope of this. So let's say I add it over here, like initialize it over here, but I actually like you know mm, declare, like I declare it over here, but I like actually initialize it over here, for example. Okay, so let's say I'm doing it something like this. I'm declaring the variable over here and I initialize it over here. Then yeah, this is known as declaring, this is known as initializing. Okay. Previously I might have said that, in initializing like variables over here. So that's not true. This is known as declaring and this is known as initializing. So I've declared it over here and I've initialized it over here. So the scope of this local variable that shadows the class variable is not beginning at the point where this local scope begins. The shadowing begins actually when the local variable is declared. So if you try to access it over here, it will give an error. It's saying variable x might not have been initialized. Saying your initializing does not happen. You have to initialize it first, then use it. Okay. So scope actually, scope will actually begin when the value is initialized. Scope will begin when value is initialized. Okay. If you attempt to access the value between the declaration and the initialization, it will give an error. Okay. Very simple stuff. That was it about shadowing. Okay, cool. Shadowing effect does not take place in methods. So in methods, it does not work that way. If you just do it in methods, but this is for like class variables, so it's working for that. All right. That was it, I believe, about scoping. We did a lot of details and everything. And now let's look into something else known as variable length arguments. So what are variable length arguments? Let me create a Java class called Varargs, okay, or something like that. So variable length arguments is basically when you create a method that takes a variable number of arguments. It is known as variable argument. So basically, what do we mean by it's known as basically a Varargs method. So basically, what do we mean by Varargs? What do we mean by variable length arguments? When we do not know how many inputs we are giving. Okay, for example, something like this: public, or like just static void fun. I'm going to pass, let's say, few integers over here. So if you want to pass some integers, you do not know how many integers you are passing, you just do dot 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 v or whatever name you want to give. I am giving v. This internally, it's taking it as an array of integers. Array is just a collection of integers. If you do it like string, it will take an array of string. If you do it like char, it will take a array of char. So basically what I'm trying to do over here is that you can do it something like this. You can do something like if I try to print this, I can say print arrays.toString. We did it previously. I'll explain more about it when we do arrays. V. Let's try to run this function. I can say function is taking variable length argument, so I can pass any number of arguments I want. That is the beauty of variable length arguments. In the sum example and whatever, we were taking 2 arguments. Here it's saying you can take any number of arguments. Run this, it will print all of these and it will internally store it in an array. Okay, these are known as variable length arguments. Length is not constant, it varies towards the variable of input that you will be providing. If I write string over here, it will give like error, like hey, it is asking for strings, you are giving numbers. That's why giving an error. Okay, cool. So basically this syntax is telling the compiler that this can be called, this function fun can be called via more than 0 arguments, 0 or more than 0 arguments. This will also work. This will be an empty list, empty array. Okay, so as a result, v is like it's implicitly declared as an array of type int. If I write string over here, it will be declared as an array of type string. So we'll look more into array. Array is just like collection of characters and stuff. We'll look more into it later on when we do it. But currently that is pretty much about it. Cool. Alrighty. Another thing that I want to share over here is that what if you want to have a mix of arguments? So basically you want to have normal arguments as well and keyword arguments as well. So basically in that case you can do something like static void multiple arguments. So for example, you can add int a, int b, and then you can add something like int variable number of arguments. Okay, that is also totally possible. If you want to call this, you're basically going to do something like this. Multiple, I can add, if I add some, let's say, string over here. Okay, so I can say multiple 2 comma 3 comma, after that it's going to take strings. So always note this order. If I'm saying a first, a should come first, b first, b should come first, strings after that, strings after this. Strings are variable length arguments. Here in this case, so I can add anything I like. Random. If I remove this, it will give error. It's saying a should be integer, a is integer, b should be integer, it's taking this as a b argument. So you cannot skip anything like this. Okay, this is very important, the ordering. You cannot skip stuff like this. All right, you cannot also do something. Let's try something like this. Let's say in between I insert variable length arguments. That is also not allowed. Error, it's giving this a variable argument parameter must be the last in this list. Why? Because how would I know if this was integer? Okay, how would I know that when is b coming in? Because this can contain any number of arguments. How would I know when I should start for b? How would I know that? Hence, this is another rule. This should always come at the end. Variable length arguments always at the end. Let me tell you a little bit more about another concept that is known as function overloading. Okay, function overloading. What does it mean? Imagine you have two functions of the same name. Okay, static void function and another function you have of the same name function. Okay, it does not matter if like the the return type is changed or whatever. Function loading basically happens two or more functions of the same name. They can exist if the parameters are different. Here if I'm writing int a and here I'm writing, let's say, string name, the errors are gone. And when I'm actually calling the function here, I'm saying call the function with a number, then it's going to call this function. When I'm saying call the function with a string, then it's going to call this function. How is it determining which function to call? This is known as function overloading. When two or more functions have the same name, same like return type and stuff, but different arguments. It can even be like same number of arguments, but sorry, same type of argument, but different arguments, that also works. Okay, but this thing inside the bracket should be different for every function. Name then can be same. Then how is the function actually determining, how is my program determining which function to run? Let's look into that. Okay, so basically to sum up that when is this happening? So this actually happens when your program gets compiled. So when this will be compiled, it will be like, oh, it's actually taking an integer. Which function method that names, which function that is called fun takes integer? It's going to be like this one. So at compile time, it's going to decide which function to run. This happens at compile time. Function overloading, at compile time, it decides which function to run. Function overriding is something we'll look into object-oriented programming, which happens at runtime. Okay, but for now, this is function overloading. Two things you need to consider in order to have the same name. either the number of arguments should be different or the type of arguments should be different. If the number of arguments is same, these are the two ways to provide function overloading. All right, in shadow, in Varargs, there might be something like this. So there might be something like if you're providing function overloading over here. So basically, let me run this program. So here I'm saying, let's say first one, and here I'm saying something like, let's say second one. First one will run because I'm passing integer. Okay, first one, print the integer. If I run this one, then second one will run. It will say Kunal, it will say second one, Kunal Kushwaha. This will not run. It's also not highlighted because it's not running right now. Okay, very cool stuff. Function overloading, very simple, and you can do much more things with it. You can say static void sum. You can say something like let's say sum of two numbers, int a and int b. So you can say return a plus b, and then you can have the same thing. Sorry, it's going to be returning an integer. You can have the same thing like this, int c, a plus b plus c. So when I'm doing function call for 3 and 4, it's actually going to run this one, not the function call, the sum one. It is going to run this one. It's going to print 7. Actually I have to print this. Int answer is equal to this, print answer. It's going to print 7. Okay, if I add one more over here, then it's printing, then it's going to run this one. If I add one more over here, it will give error. It's going to be like, which function called sum takes 4 arguments? It's going to be like, there is no sum function that takes 4 arguments. Error. Okay, in Varargs, imagine something like this. Imagine that you have something like static fun. You have something like static void fun. You have something like int vararg, and let's say in the next one you have, is it already being created? Yeah, it's already being created. So I can say demo. Okay, and the demo next one can be of, let's say, type string. Okay, so if you pass like something like I can say sout arrays dot toString v, just printing. Okay, so if you call demo with the numbers, it's going to do this one. Basically in IntelliJ, if any one of the files have errors, so basically I showed you an error purposely in the previous example, so the file will not run. So no worries, you can run it again now. So it's printing the numbers, and if I convert these into strings, Kunal, comma Rahul, in that case it's going to print this one. You can see this is now unhighlighted, means it's not being used. So it will now print this one. Okay, what if I don't add anything over here? If I don't add anything, is it going to run this one or this one? Error. This is known as ambiguity. Okay, because the vararg parameter, it cannot be empty in this case, because at compile time it will not be able to decide if it's the function is overloading. It will not be able to decide. Here you have not provided any data. Do I run this one or do I run this one? When you were providing integers, I knew I had to run this one. When you were providing strings, I knew I had to run this one. If you're not providing anything, which one do I run? Error. So cannot be duplicate in terms of overriding varargs. It cannot be empty when you're overriding varargs. Okay, but it will not know, right, which one to run. That is why it cannot be empty. I hope that makes sense. All right. Now let's do a few questions over here. So for example, let's say we can say another class called questions, public static void main. We can do the prime one. So I can take a number scanner input is equal to, we have already done this one like in the previous lectures, but now we're going to do everything in methods and functions. So instead of writing the code in main, we're actually going to write a code in the separate functions and methods. So I can say system dot in, and then I can say int n is equal to in dot next int, and then I'm going to print, I'm going to create another function. I'm going to say static, I'm going to print true or false, so whether it's prime or not. I can say is prime my number n. So here I'm just going to print is prime the number n. So it's going to either print me true or false. So if you want to look at the algorithm that we're using over here, you can check out the initial videos, the flowchart one and the pseudocode and flowchart, like the introduction to, conditionals and stuff. Over there we discussed in detail how the square root method is like, how we're only checking till the square root and stuff. We did an entire explanation on that, also created a flowchart, and now we're going to be coding this. So basically, if n is less than equal to 1, I can return false. Oops, it's actually n. And otherwise I'm going to start dividing from 2 while c star c is less than equal to n. I'm going to start dividing. I'm going to say, hey, if this number divides n, means if the remainder is equal to 0, means it's not prime. Otherwise, just check. And you all know I mentioned it earlier. Return basically means program over. So whenever this condition is hit, while loop will not execute after that. It will just be over. It will return false. This value will be false. It will print false. Okay, I could have done something like this as well. Store this in another answer. Boolean answer is equal to this and print answer. Same thing, but just to make things clear, just to make things like, less code, I just wrote it directly over here instead of storing in any variable. Otherwise, I can just say if c star c, like the square of c is greater than n, you can just say, return true. Otherwise, you can say return false. Over here, notice it's giving a highlight again. I can do alt enter. It will simplify it basically. So basically saying if c stars, return c star c greater than n. So that is what we were doing before. If this was greater than n, I was returning true. Otherwise, I was returning false. If this is true, return true. Otherwise, return false. Can't we just return this then? Because this thing that I have highlighted will either be true or false. So if I directly return this, either true will be returned or false will be returned. That is what we're doing this, directly returning it. Return whatever the answer of this expression is. If c star t is greater than n, it will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. That's it. Let's try to run this. Not prime. 2 is prime. 3 is prime. 4 is not prime. 5 is prime. 6 is not prime. 7 is prime. 9 is not prime. 11 is prime, for example. Let's take some squares as well. 25 not prime, giving correct. 49 not prime, giving correct. 83 should be prime, giving correct. So working very nicely. If you want to understand how this thing is entirely working, we have the playlist in the description. Make sure you check that out. We can write some other code as well. We also wrote one for temperature. Okay, so you can write that down yourself. We can try some new questions. Maybe we can try to see whether a number is an Armstrong number, or we can print all the Armstrong numbers. Print all the 3-digit Armstrong numbers basically. Print all the 3-digit Armstrong numbers. So Armstrong numbers are basically like, let's say if I'm talking just about 3-digit Armstrong numbers to make things simpler. So basically if I'm talking about 3-digit Armstrong numbers, then if I'm saying, let's say a number A is equal to 153. So Armstrong number basically means take every digit. If it is a 3-digit number, cube of it and add this. What is this going to be? 1 plus what is 5 into 5 into 5? It's actually 125 plus what is 3 into 3 into 3? It's actually 27. This is basically equal to what? 153. 28 plus 125. You see, 28 plus 125, 13, 153. Okay. So if every 3-digit number, if cube of individual digits and sum of those is giving the same number, which is 153, then it's an Armstrong number. Okay. So how do we solve this problem? So basically, if we have 153, we are going to take every single digit, cube it and take the sum. Very simple. Okay, and we already know how to take the individual digits by taking the remainder. So if we have a is equal to 153, I'm going to say while a is greater than 0, take the last digit. So I'm going to say remainder is equal to a modulo 10, taking the remainder. If you want to understand how this is working internally, make sure you watch the previous video. Link is in the description of the playlist. And it's going to take 3. I'm going to then cube it. Cube the remainder. Okay. So I'm going to cube the remainder. It's going to be 3 cube. And I'm going to say sum plus equal to whatever cube I had over here. And I'm going to say a is equal to a divided by 10. So a will now be 15. Then this thing will run again. Remainder will now be 5. Cube of 5, which is equal to 5 cube, which is 125. Add this in the sum. Sum is equal to now 3 cube from previous and now 5 cube as well. That will be 1 and so on and so forth. That is how we'll be doing. Let's try to code this example. Okay, so let's try to code this example. So basically, if I'm saying I just want a function that prints whether a number given to it is Armstrong or not. So static, if it's telling me true or false, then Boolean return type is Armstrong or not this number n. I can take an original one. So I can take an original one, like, because I'm going to change n again and again, and I basically want to compare the original value of n with all the sum. So that is this original value. Sum initially is equal to 0. Then I'm going to say while n is greater than 0, what do we need to do? I can say that my remainder is equal to n modulo 10, and n is equal to n divided by 10. Now I just need to add the cube in the value in the sum. So I can say sum is equal to sum plus cube. So basically I can say remainder into remainder into remainder. Okay, very simple stuff. And after that we can say something like in the end that if the sum is equal to the original value, then I can say return true. It's an Armstrong number. Otherwise return false. I can simplify this. If I just return this statement directly, that is also makes sense. If this is true, if sum is equal to original, it will return true. Otherwise, if sum is not equal to original, it will return false. Let's try to run this. I can say print is Armstrong, 153 or n, whatever I pass. It's pass 153, it should give me true. True. If I say something like 456, it's giving me false. Let's try to print all the Armstrong numbers from, all the 3-digit Armstrong numbers. So I can say for int I is equal to till 3 digits. What is the first 3-digit number? 100. What is the last 3-digit number? I can say all the numbers less than 1000. And then I can just say if is Armstrong, if this number is Armstrong number, then just print it. Say I don't want to print in another new line. Run this file. It's actually asking for an input because I did not comment this. Never mind. There are only 4 Armstrong numbers. There are only 4 3-digit Armstrong numbers. 153, 370, 371 and 407. Nice. Okay. Cool. Much more questions will be coming in the next section when we'll be doing arrays, and actually more questions will be coming when we will be actually doing some algorithms. Okay, so all the other simple questions I'll leave in the assignment, but when we'll be actually working with algorithms, we'll be doing like so many questions in one lecture, like a lot of questions. When we're doing sorting, for example, searching, hash maps, and graphs, and traversing, and linked list, and whatever. So we'll be doing so many questions when we actually work with algorithms. This is like the basic stuff. So in this, there was like a lot of theory involved, and I believe now it's able to, you're able to understand. You can create any function you like. So basically, just for the assignments, what I would want you to do is all the questions you have covered till now, try to solve those questions using functions. That is your assignment. All right. So that is pretty much about it. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Check out the links in the description, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.